Zimbabwe, while you were worrying about the price of bread and the strength of the ZiG, the lights were on at new parliament building in Mount Hamden, and they weren't just keeping the guards warm. On February the 10th, the mask didn't just sleep. No, it was thrown in the fire. Minister Jenfan Muswere confirmed Constitutional Amendment number 3, and they are calling it alignment. I call it autopsy for your freedom. They want to move the goalposts from 5 years to 7 years, but here's the punchline. They don't want you to vote for the president anymore. They want the parliament to do it for you. Tonight, this morning, we unmask this 2030 plot. Is this a republic or it is a country club for the elite? So we're going to go deeper into the stories that are trending online right about now, and we are going to go even deeper with what is happening in the nation of Zimbabwe. We see Patrick Chinamasa is under fire over the 2030 agenda. Then we see a 24-hour page in the Zimbabwe cabinet. What is happening in the nation of Zimbabwe? We're going to dig in deeper. Everything. We see secret documents also leaked from the Zimbabwe government, and the Job Scholar National Democratic Working Group has petitioned everything that is happening, the 2030 agenda, etc. So we're going to be taking a really deep dive to find out what is happening in the nation of Zimbabwe. Let's talk about continuity. That's the buzzword, right? They say 5 years is too short to build a bridge or fix a road. Funny, isn't it? It took God 6 days to build the universe, but it takes ZANU-PF 7 years to just finish a cabinet meeting. But look at the matter. At 83 years old, the president isn't looking for a second term. He is looking for a century. By the time 2030 rolls around, a child born today will be in grade 3. They even see a change in leadership. This isn't policy stability. It's a stay list agenda wrapped in a legislative flag. They are not extending the term. They are extending the suffering. Are we seeing now the death of the direct vote? Ladies and gentlemen, now this is the real poison. Moving to the indirect mode. They want to copy the South African system, but without the South African accountability. If Parliament picks the president and ZANU-PF holds a whipped 2/3 majority, then your 2028 election day is nothing but a public holiday for rice and beer. Your vote becomes a souvenir of democracy that used to exist. Why bother with the ballot box when the decision is already made in the boardroom? We are transitioning from a nation of voters to a nation of spectators. They want you to watch your future to be decided on a TV screen, not in the ballot box. The legal egos are already circling. Section 328 says you can't change the rules to benefit yourself while in the chair, but they think they can by the law. They are banking on you being too tired, too hungry, and too distracted to care. But remember, a leader who is afraid of a vote is a leader who knows the people have left him behind. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, we are the truth hunters and we hunt for our stolen future. The hunt for our stolen future starts right now. And the ghost returns. They thought silence was surrender. For 2 years, the yellow was painted over. They seized the offices. They took the funds. They even tried to take the name. But on the streets of Harare and the villages of Matabeleland, they couldn't take the memory. Nelson Chamisa is back, but he isn't bringing back the party. He's bringing a consensus. He calls it Agenda 2026. Is this a political revival, or is just a ghost haunting a haunted house? Today we go into the heart of the movement that is the ruling party checking their locks at night. (2026 versus 2030). Why 2026? Why not wait for 2028 elections? This is because Chamisa knows we are just discussed in the 2030 plot. By 2028, the law will already have been changed. By 2028, the trap will be set. 2026 is the red line. Is the year of the constitutional amendment. Is the ground. He is trying to build a unity of force, not soldiers, but of citizens. He is betting that if he can mobilize people before the law changes, the law won't change at all. It's a race against the legislative clock. And the no structure riddle. The critics and even some of his own allies are frustrated. Where is the office? Who is the treasurer? What is the name of the party? But here's the truth hunters take. In Zimbabwe, a structure is a target, a headquarters is a place to be raided. But having no structure, Chamisa has created a political virus that ZANU-PF doesn't know how to vaccinate against. You can't arrest the lives in the hearts of the people instead of a brick and mortar office. But the big question remains, can you win a marathon without a pair of running shoes? Now the stage is set. On one side, you have the most armored vehicle of the 2030 plot. On the other, a tidal wave agenda of 2026. One represents the power of the law, the other represents the law of the people. This isn't just politics. It's a soul search for Zimbabwe. Chamisa is gambling his entire legacy on the idea The citizens are finally ready to lead themselves. The clock isn't ticking for him, it's ticking for us. And the cabinet shake up, and the Chiwenga factor. What happened at the cabinet? What happened at the Zimbabwe cabinet? Before we go there, we see Patrick Chinamasa goes under fire over ED2030.
I understand clearly the motivation behind the resolution. We have scored great achievements in a very short of time under the leadership of His Excellency the President. So I understand the motivation is that these achievements should continue. However, our department was being asked the question, is it legally possible? And the short answer I gave was that yes, it's legally possible. But listen, but to achieve it, we will need two separate constitutional amendments. One amendment to remove the presidential term that is fixed in the Constitution. The next amendment, constitutional amendment, should be to remove the disability that the Constitution places on His Excellency to serve beyond 2028. Listen, and the constitutional bills must be separate, not in one constitutional bill. And each constitutional bill must be followed by a referendum. So we are looking here at two constitutional amendment bills going through all the motions and also two separate referenda. So I thought on this amendment I should seek instructions from His Excellency the President. I was granted a meeting in August where I raised the issue to find out what his position is. I was given an answer, but I was not satisfied. I asked it again for a meeting mid-September, again to seek an answer. I was given the same answer that I was given in August. But just to be sure whether I was in the right direction, I called and asked for another meeting, which His Excellency granted me on Tuesday. And this time, I had a witness. I was not alone, fortunately. I was given the same answer that I was given in August, in September, and on Tuesday. Just before I took the podium, I whispered in the ear of the President, is what you told me on the 3 meetings still stand? And he was emphatic, it still stands. Now what is that answer? And in fact, I must say, each time I went to ask, I got the impression that he was angry with me for raising issues where he had made pronouncements locally and while he was in the People's Republic of China. And I felt that given my position I should always heed what the leadership says. But I wanted to get it from the horse's mouth. Now, His Excellency's answer, and I want to repeat what he said on Tuesday. And many of you have heard it on many occasions, that His Excellency says he is a constitutionalist, and for certain I know His Excellency is a constitutionalist. And furthermore, His Excellency's hand was involved in the drafting of the current constitution. Those of you who remember, I was chairing the party, I was the chief negotiator in the party subcommittee, and I was reporting to His Excellency for that matter. So I will say that His Excellency had a big hand in the drafting of the current constitution, the national current constitution. So His Excellency is saying, I'm a constitutionalist.
Election mode. Yes, let's get up. Whenever we talk on my constitution mode. Yes, let's get up. Whenever we talk on my constituency. I can't do without an answer. I'm not going to ask 2030 and Mnangagwa. Do not go down from Soro from Mariana Kakara. Zhemu MP at Kambamuro. Sisipedza election. Anongo garapache ambijana kwe gore. Pane papera gore. Unotanga kutipana kwa kutaura kuti. Pana ndingari kutenderera. Ndokungaruda kuita MP. Uyo banga tironga kuti tironge kuti toita maprojects apa anopa vanhu pundutso. Mari yakukamurwa yakumbonopa vafana wawa kuti ndiudzei kuti ari kufamba wacho ari kumboita sei. Mbona hazvibatisire kuti nyika iende mberi. Tiri kurasa mari yakawanda nezvinhu izvo. Tiri kuti toda kumbowedzera kutatamudza temu. Hatisi kuda kuti tivape imwe. Toda kutatamudza matemu enyu wazviti kwakapamura. Kuitatamudza so. Uya kusona wewe. Ubaona yakatatamuka. Ubva ambobata muchunocha. Ndochiwa mari rega ndimboziya mari yenyu. Election mode. Yes, let's get up. Whenever we talk on my constituency. I can't do without an answer. I'm not going to ask 2030 and Mnangagwa. Do not go down from Soro from Mariana Kakara. Zhemu MP at Kambamuro. Sisipedza election. Anongo garapache ambijana kwe gore. Pane papera gore. Unotanga kutipana kwa kutaura kuti. Pana ndingari kutenderera. Ndokungaruda kuita MP. Uyo banga tironge kuti toita maprojects apa anopa vanhu pundutso. Mari yakukamurwa yakumbonopa vafana wawa kuti ndiudzei kuti ari kufamba wacho ari kumboita sei. Mbona hazvibatisire kuti nyika iende mberi. Tiri kurasa mari yakawanda nezvinhu izvo. Tiri kuti toda kumbowedzera kutatamudza temu. Hatisi kuda kuti tivape imwe. Toda kutatamudza matemu enyu wazviti kwakapamura. Kuitatamudza so. Uya arikuda kusona wewe. Ubaona yakati.
Apologies, my audio was not working there. All right. Big up to everybody who's watching us live. Apologies for that audio there. Well, let me just check the timeline so I can edit it out. All right, around 24 minutes. So we see this is shared here. It reads, Clause 9 to 11 and 16 creates the elimination commissions, transfers voter registration to Registrar Central. These are profound reforms to electoral administration and integrity, among the most sensitive in any democracy. They are complex and mechanical and technical and require standalone debate. Their inclusion here is opportunistic and reckless, guaranteed to attract fierce opposition that will obscure the primary goal. So this is our intelligence and risk assessment. Clause 14 removes transparency in judicial appointments, public interviews. Thank you very much, Taku, for that one day. Thank you very much for that one day. To those watching us live, you can write your comments in the top chat or in the super chat. That's how I can get to see your name so I can give you my shout outs. Clause 15 amends section 212 on defense forces functions, changes wording from upholding this constitution to in accordance with the constitution. Now this is something to amend defense forces function from upholding the constitution to in accordance with the constitution. This is a highly sensitive and dangerous amendment that alters the foundational mandate of the defense forces. It could be misconstrued as diluting their constitutional duty and raises profound questions about civil-military relations. It's a matter of national security, policy competency, and related to presidential term extension, and introduced without any prior. All right, let's continue to the next one. All right. Removes code of conduct for traditional leaders for constitution, a specific amendment containing, again, unrelated to presidential tenure agenda. Clause 17, 1821 abolishes the Gender Commission, National Peace and Reconciliation Commission. So we see there is a lot of amendments that are going to be made here. All right, the next page. Fatal procedure flaw, blatant disregard for Section 328. Section 328 of the Constitution states, notwithstanding any other provisions of this section, an amendment in terms of term limit provisions of the Constitution has the effect extending the length of time that a person may hold or occupy any public office may be approved by a majority of the voters in a referendum. The draft bill attempted bypass clauses 3 and 7 and 8 of the draft bill contain, notwithstanding Section 3287 clauses. The clauses represent a direct and brazen attempt to legislate away a supreme constitutional requirement. A parliamentary act cannot override the Constitution's own entrenched amendment procedures. Legal reality. Any constitutional amendment extending the president's term must, by supreme law, be put to a national referendum. There is no legal shortcut. To proceed with a parliamentary process alone is to enact a law that is fundamentally ultra-vires and will be struck down by the Constitutional Court, causing immense reputational damage and chaos. There we see ultra-vires. Ultra-vires means acting or done beyond one's legal power or authority. It's a Latin phrase used in law to describe an act that requires legal authority but is done without it. That's meaning of ultra vires there. Usually it applies in corporate law. I don't know if government falls under corporate law. In government context, it may differ. Acts by government bodies are out of vice if they violate the constitution or exceed the authority granted by the legislation. And then what are the consequences if that happened? The act will be void, meaning it cannot be enforced. It cannot be enforced or ratified by the government or company. Now the draft bill amendment bypass legal reality, any constitutional amendment there, strategic implementation, the military resolution, code for legal processes, the foremost legal processes. The foremost legal processes for this specific change is a referendum. By drafting a bill that tries to sidestep this, the Ministry of Justice is guiding the party in government into a legal dead end. The Minister of Justice has substituted the party's focus directive with his own omnibus constitutional reform project. This is an overreach that dilutes the core message. All right, top secret. So we're seeing these documents are coming from the ruling party among themselves. Overall assessment: the current process being driven by Minister of Justice, Legal and Home Affairs, Honorable Ziyambi, and the Attorney General, Honorable Virginia Mabiza, who are being assisted by the fugitive from Zimbabwean law, Jonathan Moyo, former minister of the government of Zimbabwe, now residing in Nairobi, is not only illegitimate, but is very dangerous. Now it's getting interesting. It exposes the president, executive, ZANU-PF party and government to ridicule and legal challenges for proposing a bill that is both politically bloated and legally defective. Then the last page here. To proceed on the current path is to quote constitutional illegitimacy, political turmoil, and the failure of a very objective of resolution number 1. So to achieve discipline and adherence to the law must be restored. So if we go over back again to x.com, we see this one here. Proposed the General Amnesty 2026, which is talking about here. So the following category of prisoners will benefit under 2026 General Amnesty: all convicted female prisoners, juveniles, prisoners serving an effective term of 48 months and below, inmates certified terminally ill, prisoners at open prison, all prisoners above age 60, prisoners sentenced to life imprisonment provided they served 20 years. Oh, this is going to be bigger to those who are serving life. Imagine, I serve 20 years. Prisoners with disability, an additional 1/4 remission of the effective term of imprisonment to those who were sentenced to more than 48 months. Meaning kuti anachimombe kana anga ni 12 years ananga kubiswa 3 years ananga kusala ni 9 years. So Muswere says on the surface you think it's a benevolent gesture by a compassionate human president, but with ED Mnangagwa, everything is calculated for political gain. Where is that him and Zimbabwe are virtually emptying the prisons to create place for those who will be arrested during clampdowns on any resistance on the 2030 agenda. This is according to Jealous Mawari. Another one says, bear with me, something is wrong, my system is not stable. I don't know what's happening. I think it's my HDMI cable cutting audio there. Patrick Shinamasa is the legal brains behind of ZANU-PF, and from what we know is that there is a video of him telling ZANU-PF Congress that constitutional amendment tabled by Zambia a few days ago goes through referendum. The idea of bypassing the referendum has predominantly been advanced by Jonathan Moyo. Herein lies the problem. Surely such a significant material change of the constitution should be tabled before the people, or else anything peddled as an amendment is a decree. So already they are going forward. Now we see National Democratic Working Group. Jajob Sikala says, meet the architect of the Constitution, Justice Minister Zhemu, who engineered the new bill which was approved by the ZANU-PF cabinet to strip away electoral constitutional right to choose own president. This evil and taking the nation hostage must be stopped. That is by the National Democratic Working Group there. Then we also see they write a petition. Big up to Taku. NST Chapasuka says ZANU-PF thugs kuda kurambira pazvigaro vachingova but just developing their pockets. Humblicious, we need election period. Simbiso Mugo Ziri say Champions Network TV. To those watching us live, you can write your comments in the top chat or in the super chat. That's how I can give you names so I can give you my shout outs. All right, so Job Sikala's National Democratic Working Group writes to the African Commission Chairman, His Excellency Muhammad Ali Youssef, 11 February 2026, Africa Union, DSA, petition by the National Democratic Working Group, NDWG, to the African Union. Reference: Coup in motion in Zimbabwe against Article 30 of the Africa Union Constitutive Act through legislative extension and prolongation of the term of office by the incumbent. All right, let's continue. And the writer, The National Democratic Working Group, NDWG, the Zimbabwe Social Justice Movement, under the leadership of Honorable Job Scala and the surviving political prisoner, lawyer, and former member of parliament in Zimbabwe, who is our chairman and chief facilitator, rise to your honorable office to alert you of the coup in motion currently happening in Zimbabwe in violation of Article 30 of the Africa Union Constitutive Act to extend and prolong the term of office of the incumbent. This petition seeks to highlight what is currently happening in Zimbabwe in relation to the instruments the AU created to counter undemocratic impositions of rule by regime without the consent of the governed. All right, so we see Job Scala here is citing the Africa Union itself. Now this is something else we are seeing here. How effective can this be? All right, let's Article 30 classified the following as constitutional and a constitutional change of legitimate governance to its member state as enunciated by the Lom Declaration in 2000 and related protocols extended upon what constitutes an unconstitutional change of government, UCG, to include military coup d'etats, intervention by mercenaries, 3 armed dissident or rebel groups replacing elected governments. Number 4, refusal to relinquish power after losing free and fair elections. Number 5, manipulations of the constitution to stay in power. Now, that is something else here. Now, what is the Lom Declaration? The Lom Declaration, officially declaration on the framework for OAU response to unconstitutional changes of government adopted by the organizational OAU in 2000 in Lom, Togo, is a landmark legal framework designed to address, prevent, and sanction unconstitutional changes of government in Africa. So it was there even under the days of Mugabe. So it was reaffirmed and updated in the 2022 Reflection Forum, which continues to condemn coup perpetrators and manipulation of the democratic processes. In 2022 and 2025, separate unrelated declarations with similar names were adopted, including Lom Declaration on Cybersecurity and Fight Against Cybercrime. This is what is cited in the Job Scala's petition there to the AU. Let's continue. And he continues to say, our raising of the red flag against the developments happening in Zimbabwe is informed by number 5 of Lom Declaration. Zimbabwe is a member of state of the Africa Union, and in terms of the international law, it is bound by the rules, protocols, and the charter of the AU. Developments happening in Zimbabwe to mutilate the constitution, to prolong and extend the term of office of the incumbent, constitute a coup and unconstitutional change of government. The African Union cannot remain mute when a coup is in motion in one of its member states, that is Zimbabwe, in terms of its charter and protocols. Many people are being abused, lives being lost. The anti-coup peaceful campaigners are under severe repression, attack, and arbitrary arrests, and there is escalation of human rights abuses as we petition you for your intervention. The Zimbabwe government has introduced Constitutional Amendment Bill 2026 seeking to prolong and amend the Constitution of Zimbabwe, Amendment number 13, to extend the term of office of the incumbent and this government from the term ending 2028 to 2030 without taking such amendments to referendum or without having elections due in 2028. This is a flagrant violation of the AU Constitutive Act, and we call upon the AU to take the following measures as prescribed by Article 30, that Zimbabwe be suspended from Africa Union, and stipulated by Article 30 of the Constitutive, which reads as the following. Article 30, suspension. Governments which shall come to power through unconstitutional shall not be allowed to participate in any activities of the Union, debunking any doubt in the minds of those who may not have knowledge of our AU Constitutive Act provision. The specific offences what constitute unconstitutional change of government was then defined by Lom Declaration in 2000 to give effective what constitutes unconstitutional change of government. What is happening in Zimbabwe is a coup and an unconstitutional change of government against its people in terms of the African Union Constitutive Act, and we seek the implementation of the remedy provided for in terms of Article 30, that it must be applicable and implemented. By copy of this, we have also advised all other international bodies such as the United Nations, the South African Development Community SADC, the European Union EU, and about this impending coup and unconstitutional change of governance that is currently in motion in Zimbabwe. Yours faithful, Zenzo Nkomo, National Democratic Working Group, Acting Chairman and Chief Facilitator, Empire House, Kopi, Harare. So what are these changes proposed? What are the changes that are proposed? This is a memorandum to Cabinet on the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2026 by the Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs. All right. So it reads, there is an introduction. Rationale. The primary objectives are to enhance political stability and policy continuity, allow national development programs to be implemented to completion, clarify institutional mandates, eliminate functions overlap that undermine efficiency and accountability, strengthen democratic structures through rationalization of electoral and oversight of institutions. Promote long-term national stability, inclusivity, and public confidence in constitutional institutes. In detail, the bill provided as follows. Clause 1 for the title of the bill. Repeals Section 92 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe with a parliamentary process for electing president if it specifies that a candidate must secure majority of votes. Constitution parliamentary process for electing president. Wow. Repeal Section 92 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. What does Zimbabwe Section 92 say? Says requiring to be elected through direct universal secret ballot. The president and vice president should be elected through ballot. So if that is repealed, it means parliament will now have to elect president. And what happens to parliament? What about parliament? The currently sitting parliament and their terms expire. What then happens next? Clause 3 and 7 and 8 amend Section 95, 143 and 158 of the Constitution to substitute the current 5-year term of office for President and Parliament with a 7-year term. The objective is to reform it to reduce election-related disruption, enhance policy continuity, allow sufficient time for the implementation. Terms are but hey, the time is happening now. Section 114, Clause 5 of the Constitution substituting High Court with Supreme Court, thereby requiring that a person appointed as Attorney General possesses the qualification necessary for the appointment as Judge of the Supreme Court. Then, in addition, clauses 9, 10, and 11 establish Zimbabwe Electoral Delimitation Commission, transfer function of delimitation of electoral boundaries from Zimbabwe Electoral Commission to the new commission. Repeals Section 239, Clause 12 and 16 that relate to registration of voters. Clause 15 amends Section 212. Now this is the big one here. Section 212, functions of the defense forces. To uphold the Constitution and substituting them in accordance with the Constitution, the amendment is intended to reinforce provisions of Section 213 and 214 of the Constitution. Clauses 12 and 16 repeal Section 239 that relate to the registration of voters. Okay, so this one to do with the military is the last one. Honorable Zhemu, Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs. This is where we are going, or is this where we are going? What is going to happen next in the nation of Zimbabwe? Now, the cabinet shake up and the Chiwenga factor. The 24-hour exit. In the world of truth and the truth hunter, there are no accidents, only assignments. On February 11, Jenfan Muswere was the face of the 2030 bill. By February the 12th, he was cleaning out his desks. And the question is, why? Why would you demote the most vocal messenger right when the war starts? The state media will tell you it's a routine reshuffle. Is this a crime scene? Let us look at the ZBC fallout and why Zhemu, the new war minister of the airwaves, has become that. Let's go into the weeds. Rumor has it Muswere tried to exercise his power at ZBC. He tried to move against board chairperson Harriet Rushwire. In any other country, a minister manages his board. In Zimbabwe, if that board member has the right sentiment, the minister is the one who gets managed. This was a message to every technocrat in the building. You serve the family, not the state. Muswere flew too close to the sun, and his wing didn't just melt. They were clipped by the president himself. Zhemu, the Minister of Silence. Enter Zhemu. He has been moving through energy mines like a chess piece. He isn't a journalist. He isn't a communicator. He is the fixer. As the 2030 bill heads to the floor, the government doesn't need a spokesperson. They need a gatekeeper. Zhemu, his job is to ensure that the only news you hear is that 2030 is good for your health. He is there to crush the doom drama and silence the independent voices that are calling out the coup. The Ministry of Information has officially become the Ministry of Silence. And the Chiwenga silence. The Chiwenga silence. The big question is, where is the general? In all this, where is he? Every time the cabinet is rejigged, the gap between the president and the VP grows wider. By surrounding himself with hardliners like Zhemu, he is building a fortress. He is purging the moderates and the Chiwenga curious technocrats. This isn't about governing. This is about survival. The 2030 plan is a solo mission. Anyone who isn't 100% on the flight path is being pushed out of the plane. The question for Chiwenga is simple. How long do you stay in a cockpit when you aren't allowed to touch the controls?
kune vamwe vakutokutsona maconstituency akazviti kutaura nezvavamnangagwa nhasi kuti 2031 Mnangagwa vanenge vachitoko ndoda kutaura pamusoro pamari yena akagarapo ndiani mump ari pakambamuro tichipedza election anongogara pacheya mbijana kwegore pane papera gore unotanga kuzwa tifana twakutaura kuti pana nhinga ari kutenderera ndokunga ari kuda kuita yembi uyo paanga achironga kuti rega tironge kuti toita maprojects api anopa vanhu pundutso mari yakukamurwa yakumbonopa vafana hwawa kuti ndiudzei kuti ari kufamba wacho ari kumboita sei one hazvifanisire kuti nyika iende mberi tiri kurasa mari yakawanda nezvinhu izvo toda kumbowedzera kutatamudza temu hatisi kuda kuti tivape imwe toda kutatamudza matemu enyu wazviti kwakapamura kuitatamudza so uya ari kuda kusona we obva ona yakatatamuka obva ambobata muchunota ndotiwa mari rega timbosiya mari yenayo.
I understand clearly the motivation behind the resolution. We have scored great achievements in a very short of time under the leadership of His Excellency the President. So I understand the motivation is that these achievements should continue. However, our department was being asked the question, is it legally possible? And the short answer I gave was that yes, it's legally possible. But listen, but to achieve it, we will need two separate constitutional amendments. One amendment to remove the presidential term that is fixed in the Constitution. The next amendment, constitutional amendment, should be to remove the disability that the Constitution places on His Excellency to serve beyond 2028. Listen, and the constitutional bills must be separate, not in one constitutional bill. And each constitutional bill must be followed by a referendum. So we are looking here at two.
Big up to Takuzgo Makamba Ngoni, Nyao, Ernest Chapasuka, Taku, Umbalicious, everybody who's watching us live. Feri Katuruza. To those watching us live, you can write comments in the top chat or in the super chat. That's how I can get to see your names. So I can give you my shout out.
I understand clearly the motivation behind the resolution. We have scored great achievements in a very short of time under the leadership of His Excellency the President. So I understand the motivation is that these achievements should continue. However, our department was being asked the question, is it legally possible? And the short answer I gave was that yes, it's legally possible. But listen, but to achieve it, we will need two separate constitutional amendments. One amendment to remove the presidential term that is fixed in the Constitution. The next amendment, constitutional amendment, should be to remove the disability that the Constitution places on His Excellency to serve beyond 2028. Listen, and the constitutional bills must be separate, not in one constitutional bill. And each constitutional bill must be followed by a referendum. So we are looking here at 2 constitutional amendment bills going through all the motions and also 2 separate referenda. So I felt on this amendment I should seek instructions from His Excellency the President. I was granted a meeting in August where I raised the issue to find out what his position is. I was given an answer, but I was not satisfied. I asked it again for a meeting mid-September, again to seek an answer. I was given the same answer that I was given in August. But just to be sure whether I was in the right direction, I called and asked for another meeting, which His Excellency granted me on Tuesday. And this time I had a witness. I was not alone, fortunately. I was given the same answer that I was given in August, in September, and on Tuesday.
Big up to Ferry Katuruza.
Just before I took the podium, I whispered in the ear of the President, is what you told me on the 3 meetings still stands? And he was emphatic. It still stands. Now, what is that answer? And in fact, I must say, each time I went to ask, I got the impression that he was angry with me for raising issues where he had made pronouncements locally and while he was in the People's Republic of China. And I felt that, given my position, I should always heed what the leadership says. But I wanted to get it from the horse's mouth. Now, His Excellency's answer, and I want to repeat what he said on Tuesday. And many of you have heard it on many occasions, that His Excellency says he is a constitutionalist, and for certain I know His Excellency is a constitutionalist. And furthermore, His Excellency's hand was involved in the drafting of the current constitution. Those of you who remember, I was chairing the party, I was the chief negotiator in the party subcommittee, and I was reporting to His Excellency for that matter. So I will say that His Excellency had a big hand in the drafting of the current constitution, the national current constitution. So His Excellency is saying, I'm a constitutionalist. I will abide by the constitution, which limits presidential terms. And I have no intention of serving beyond 2028. This will come as sad news to you, but please don't stone the messenger. So where we stand, distinguished delegates, is that of all the resolutions, there is one resolution which cannot be implemented without the express consent and agreement of His Excellency President Dr. Emmerson Mnangagwa. And on Monday, when he told me this, he said, feel free to tell them you consulted me, which is what I'm conveying to you this afternoon. So we will have our resolution, but I think we must understand, coming from here, that it will not go anywhere, because His Excellency is emphatic that when 2028 comes, he will not serve beyond that date.
Yeah.
He is very emphatic that he had a hand in the drafting and crafting of this constitution, and he cannot be seen nationally, globally, to be the first to violate what he put in place.
Paido FS2W. Jerry say big up to everybody who's watching us live right about now. Now, job seekers petition, how effective it is, how effective is it? Ladies and gentlemen, we're back with a bombshell. So remember, we talked about 2028, the year Zimbabwe was supposed to have elections, the year we were all preparing our popcorn for the ultimate showdown. Well, buckle up, buttercups, because President Mnangagwa's government apparently decided, nah, 2028, that's for amateurs. We're thinking of the year 2030. Yes, you heard that right. The whispers are turning into shouts, rumors into outright declarations. A proposed constitutional amendment to extend the presidential term and cancel 2028 elections. I mean, come on, guys. Even Netflix gives us warnings before they cancel our favorite shows. But hold the phone. Just when you thought this was going to be a solo act, a lone voice crying in the wilderness steps up to the mic, and it's none other than the indefatigable and unwavering, they can't keep me down for long, job seeker, who, let's be honest, has probably seen more courtrooms than some judges, has just dropped a diplomatic truth bomb. He's not just complaining on Twitter, he's taking it straight to the top. He's petitioning to the African Union, and what's he calling this audacious move by the government? Not a slight administrative oversight, not a minor electoral rescheduling. Oh no, my friends, he's calling it a coup in motion. Now, that's not just strong language, that's code red, emergency broadcast language. This isn't a political debate, it's a direct accusation that fundamental democratic principles are being systematically dismantled. It's like saying, honey, I didn't just forget the milk, I bought a cow and released it in the living room. So What does this mean? Why is Job Scholar taking this all the way up to AU? Well, let's unpack some glorious rhetoric, shall we? Firstly, the appeal to ethos. Sikala, despite his personal tribulations, stands as a symbol of resilience. When he speaks of a coup, it carries weight. He is not some armchair critic. He has seen the trenches. His credibility is undeniable. He is saying, I've seen enough to know a duck when it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and tries to cancel elections like a duck. Secondly, appeal to pathos. This petition isn't about legal articles. It's about hopes and dreams of millions of Zimbabweans. It's about the feeling of betrayal, the erosion of faith in the democratic process. Scala is tapping into that collective anxiety, the sense of, are we ever going to get a fair shot? He is saying, this isn't just a political chess game. It's our future on the line. And finally, the logos. By invoking the term coup in motion, Sikala is strategically aligning this extension attempt with the AU's, Africa Union's own Charter on Democracy and Governance. He is laying out the logical argument. If you, the African Union, stand for democracy, then you must recognize that removing elections is an affront to everything you claim to uphold. It's a challenge. AU, put your money where your mouth is. Now, will the AU immediately send in the peacekeepers and force a reversal? Probably not. The AU moves slower than a sloth on tranquilizers. But here's the kicker. Depiction is not endorsement. By Sikala painting this picture, he's enforcing international community to see it. He's not just sending a letter. He's sending a signal that says we are watching. The world is watching, and we will not let you quietly dismantle democracy while everyone is busy scrolling TikTok. This petition forces the conversation. It adds a crucial layer of international scrutiny. It makes it harder for the government to simply wave away criticism. It builds the case brick by diplomatic brick for when the pressure finally becomes too much to ignore. So, whether you are an optimist or a cynic, one thing is clear. Job Scholar has just ensured that Zimbabwe's 2030 vision won't be unfolding in the shadows. It's now front and center on the African stage. And that, my friends, is a victory in itself. What are your thoughts on Job Scholar's bold move? Do you think the AU will act? Let me know in the comment section below.
behind the resolution. We have scored great achievements in a very short of time under the leadership of His Excellency the President. So I understand the motivation is that these achievements should continue. However, our department was being asked the question, is it legally possible? And the short answer I gave was that yes, it's legally possible. But listen, but to achieve it, we will need two separate constitutional amendments. One amendment to remove the presidential term that is fixed in the Constitution. The next amendment, constitutional amendment, should be to remove the disability that the Constitution places on His Excellency to serve beyond 2028. Listen, and the constitutional bills must be separate, not in one constitutional bill. And each constitutional bill must be followed by a referendum. So we are looking here at two constitutional amendment bills going through all the motions and also two separate referenda. So I thought on this amendment I should seek instructions from His Excellency the President. I was granted a meeting in August where I raised the issue to find out what his position is. I was given an answer, but I was not satisfied. I asked it again for a meeting mid-September, again to seek an answer. I was given the same answer that I was given in August. But just to be sure whether I was in the right direction, I called and asked for another meeting, which His Excellency granted me on Tuesday. And this time I had a witness. I was not alone, fortunately. I was given the same answer that I was given in August, in September, and on Tuesday. Just before I took the podium, I whispered in the ear of the President, is what you told me on the 3 meetings still stands? And he was emphatic, it still stands. Now what is that answer? And in fact, I must say, each time I went to ask, I got the impression that he was angry with me for raising issues where he had made pronouncements locally and while he was in the People's Republic of China. And I felt that, given my position, I should always heed what the leadership says. But I wanted to get it from the horse's mouth. Now, His Excellency's answer, and I want to repeat what he said on Tuesday. And many of you have heard it on many occasions, that His Excellency says he is a constitutionalist, and for certain I know His Excellency is a constitutionalist. And furthermore, His Excellency's hand was involved in the drafting of the current constitution. Those of you who remember, I was chairing the party, I was the chief negotiator in the party, and I was reporting to His Excellency for that matter. So I will say that His Excellency had a big hand in the drafting of the current constitution, the national current constitution. So His Excellency is saying, I'm a constitutionalist. I will abide by the constitution, which limits presidential terms. And I have no intention of serving beyond 2028. This will come as sad news to you, but please don't stone the messenger. So where we stand, distinguished delegates, is that of all the resolutions, there is one resolution which cannot be implemented without the express consent and agreement of His Excellency President Dr. Emmerson Mnangagwa. And on Monday, when he told me this, he said, feel free to tell them you consulted me, which is what I'm conveying to you this afternoon. So we will have our resolution, but I think we must understand, coming from here, that it will not go anywhere, because His Excellency is emphatic that when 2028 comes, he will not serve beyond that date. He is very emphatic that he had a hand in the drafting and crafting of this constitution, and he cannot be seen nationally, globally, to be the first to violate what he put in place.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, forget the ballot, forget the campaign trails. The real 2028 election is happening right now behind closed doors of the barracks, while the headlines are screaming about job seekers' Africa Union petition. The real story is the invisible war over Section 212. We are witnessing a constitutional haste, and the muscle behind isn't the police. Is it the military? Let's talk law. Section 212 of the Zimbabwe Constitution is the ultimate safeguard. It says defense forces exist to protect the people and to uphold the Constitution. But here's the clickbait. Worthy truth. When the cabinet moves to mutilate the Constitution, extending terms to 2030 and letting Parliament hand-pick the president, Section 212 becomes a legal trap. If the military stays silent, are they protecting the law, or they are protecting a coup in motion? By changing the rules, the government is effectively turning the Zimbabwe Defense Forces into the world's most powerful security guards for a 2030 extension. The whispers in Harare are deafening. We know Vice President Constantine Chiwenga, the man who led the 2017 transition, is watching. We know General Philip Valerius Banda just had his term extended by the president. Then we see him retired and opted into the cabinet. Is this loyalty by design? While Ziambi handles the paperwork, the military is the one that has to decide. Do we stand with the 2013 constitution that we helped bring in, or do we stand with the 2030 agenda? This isn't just a political disagreement. It's a battle for the soul of the uniform. Enter Scala's petition. Why his petition matters to the barracks. Scala's petition to the African Union isn't just a letter, it's a notice of liability. By labeling this a coup in motion, he is telling the AU and the world that any military support for these amendments is a violation of international law. He's putting every commander on notice. If the AU acknowledges this as a constitutional coup, the military loses its legitimacy on the global stage overnight. This is, or rather, is this the end of democracy, or rather of democracy as we know it? If Parliament picks a president and the military enforces the no election 2028 rule, the Section 212 then is officially dead. If the military, the last line of defense for the people, or the final nail in the coffin, is the military the last line of defense or the final nail in the coffin? Type military in the comments if you think the general should speak up. Don't let this coup in motion happen in silence. Like and subscribe and share this before the 2030 vision becomes a 2026 reality.